Have you ever wondered how some people, even when they're criticized, insulted, or going through the storms of life still, manage to hold a gentle smile and a calm, compassionate gaze? Have you ever had that experience when someone said something casually, not even realizing it hurt you, but it stayed with you all day? You lose sleep over an unkind comment, while the person who said it probably forgot it by morning. And then you ask yourself, why am I so easily upset? How can just one sentence from someone else affect me for an entire day? But what if I told you you don't have to live like that? What if I told you there's a path shown to us thousands of years ago by the Buddha, Zen masters, and the wise ones before USA path where you can stand in the middle of life's storm and still feel as still and clear as a morning lake? This path isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's not about pretending to be okay. It's about letting go, understanding, and slowly learning to master your mind step by step through the profound yet simple wisdom of Zen and Buddhist teachings. And in this video, we're going to walk that path together through old Zen parables and everyday images that hold deep truths. A stone, a cup of tea, an empty boat, a bamboo tree in the wind. Each one offers a lesson. Peace doesn't come from changing others. It comes from returning to yourself and embracing what's already inside you. So, are you ready to begin? The empty boat and the art of letting go. Have you ever been in a situation like this? You're driving peacefully, and suddenly someone cuts you off. No signal, no warning. What's your first reaction? Annoyance? Maybe anger? Sometimes just a moment like that can ruin your whole morning. Now picture this. You're paddling a small boat on a quiet lake. The water is still. The sky is clear. Suddenly, bang, another boat crashes into yours. You look up and see it's empty. What would you do? Maybe shrug it off, shake your head, and keep paddling. But now, imagine you look up and see someone inside the boat, distracted, not paying attention, or maybe even ignoring you on purpose. How would that feel? The anger rises immediately. He should have been more careful. She's so inconsiderate. And suddenly, your mind starts to swirl not because of the crash itself, but because of how you interpret it. There's a classic Zen story called The Empty Boat. It's this very scenario. Its message is simple but powerful. The anger doesn't come from the event. It comes from the mind that clings to it. When no one is there to blame, we let things go easily. But once a someone enters the picture, whether it's a family member, coworker, or stranger, ego kicks in. We react not because it's a big deal, but because our heart hasn't yet learned how to let go. Over the years, working closely with older Buddhist students, I've noticed a common thread. It's not the big events that cause the most suffering. It's the small moments, the casual comment, the rude gesture, the broken promise that we hold on to. And that's what drains us. The Buddha once said, "Attachment is the root of suffering." Letting go doesn't mean we become indifferent. It means we stop taking everything personally. When someone speaks harshly, instead of thinking, "They're trying to hurt me," we can just try, to ask, "Maybe they're in pain and I just happen to be nearby." When someone breaks a promise, instead of spiraling into blame, we can gently wonder, have I ever broken a promise to myself? To live like an empty boat is not to be numb. It's to be free. It's to live without clinging to the idea of being right or being above others. It's to no longer demand that others match our expectations. Because when the ego loosens its grip, anger loses its roots. And only then can peace truly begin to grow not. Because life has fewer storms, but because the heart has stopped fighting the wind. The mind is a still lake. Have you ever had one of those days when your mind just feels constantly stirred up? Someone says something that rubs you the wrong way. A small issue pops up at work, one unexpected phone call, and suddenly your whole inner world is thrown into chaos. And even after it all passes, there's still this tension inside, this restlessness that doesn't seem to go away. Now, imagine this: a lake in the early morning calm, still like a mirror. When you look down, you can see the sky, the clouds, even your own reflection clear and deep. But then, a breeze stirs the water, or someone throws a stone in, and instantly the surface ripples. The reflection distorts. The human mind is just like that. When our mind is still, we see things clearly. We see others with compassion. We see problems with wisdom. But when our mind is agitated by anger, sadness, or worry even, the simplest things become tangled. We misinterpret others. We overreact. And we suffer for things that really aren't worth it. A Zen master once said, "When the mind is unmoved, all things are clear." In other words, true wisdom only reveals itself when the heart is quiet. When our mind is noisy, no matter how smart we are, making the right decision is hard. One Buddhist student once shared this experience. Every time he argued with family, he believed he was defending what's right. But afterward, sitting quietly with his breath, he realized he'd said things that were unnecessarily hurtful, not because the situation was huge, but because his mind wasn't calm. In Buddhism, meditation isn't about escaping life. It's about returning to stillness, to clarity. Just like water needs stillness to reflect the moon, the mind needs peace to see what's truly going on inside. And sometimes, all it takes is a pause, one breath, one silent moment, just enough to keep your mind from being swept away by emotional waves. In this world, none of us can avoid unexpected storms, but we can learn to keep the lake inside us undisturbed. That's how we live with more clarity, more ease, and more depth even when life shakes us from the outside. A still mind is the beginning of wisdom. And wisdom is the light that guides us through the darkness of anger and confusion. The overflowing cup. Have you ever felt like your heart is just too full? Not from having too many tasks, but from too many unspoken emotions. A comment from last week that still stings. A past hurt from years ago that was never resolved. They may seem small, but they build up like drops of water filling a cup that's already almost full. Now, picture this. A cup filled to the brim. Add just one more drop, and it spills. And then, something minor happens, a careless word, an off moment, and you snap. You feel overwhelmed, angry, out of control. But the truth is, it wasn't that one drop that caused the spill. It was the fact that the cup was already full. There's a beautiful teaching in Buddhism. To pour in fresh, clear water, you must first empty the muddy water. The heart is just like that. If it's already full of anger, bitterness, or sadness, peace has nowhere to settle. Not because peace isn't available, but because there's simply no room left for it. One older Buddhist practitioner once shared, "I go to the temple, I chant every morning, but still I feel heavy and easily irritated with my loved ones." And when she sat with herself honestly, she saw it. There were grudges from 10, 20 years ago, still held tightly. Not because they were meaningful, but because she believed they needed to be remembered. But every time she recalled them, they brought pain again. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. Letting go means you no longer let old emotions imprison your present moment. Holding on to negativity is like cluttering your cup with things that no longer serve you and then wondering why there's no space left for lightness. The Buddha once asked his monks, if someone carries a heavy bag of rocks day and night without putting it down, can they walk freely? Of course not. And we're the same. Only when we set that bag down, only when we pour a little out can peace have a place to enter. Each day, if you can, just pause, look inward, ask gently, what am I carrying in my cup today? If it's filled with worry, resentment, or sorrow, pour some of it out, through breath, through forgiveness, through gratitude. Make space for peace to come in, because peace doesn't come from the outside. Peace only stays where it finds room to rest. The silent observer. Have you ever felt anger rise up like a wave so fast and intense that you couldn't control it? Sometimes it's just something small. A careless comment, a hurtful action, and suddenly that fire flares up quick, fierce, like dry grass catching flame. And afterward, sometimes regret, sometimes exhaustion that lingers the whole day. Now, picture this, clouds drifting across the sky. They float by softly, without resistance, without clinging. If we could learn to watch our emotions like that, then anger wouldn't have a place to take root. In meditation, there's a powerful practice, becoming the silent observer. When a strong emotion like anger rises up, instead of reacting right away, just notice it. You don't need to suppress it. You don't need to run from it. Just observe, like watching a cloud fade away. And something amazing happens. When we don't cling to the emotion, it loses its power over us. There was an old monk who once shared about his younger years. Whenever he got angry, he'd have to walk around the temple several times to cool down. But after deeply studying the Buddha's teachings, he didn't need to walk anymore. He just sat quietly, took a deep breath, and watched his anger like a child crying out loud, knowing it, too, would settle. Because anger at its core is not you. It's just a temporary state, like any other emotion. But when we identify with it, we act from it. It's like seeing a dark cloud and thinking the whole sky is collapsing, when in reality, it's just passing by. The Buddha once taught, like someone standing beside a river, watching the water flow without being swept away. That's the image of a true practitioner, not clinging to emotions, not driven by reaction. And when you can become that silent witness in moments like these, that's when you touch the deepest kind of inner freedom. Not controlled by anger, not needing to win an argument, just holding stillness like a calm lake while the world churns around you. The power of silence. Have you ever been in a situation where someone says something really harsh? Maybe an insult, a sarcastic jab, even a public attack. And suddenly, your whole being tenses up. The instinct is to snap back right away so you're not seen as weak. But sometimes, you stay silent. And later you wonder, was that wisdom, or was I just letting it slide? That's a real question, especially in a world where silence is often seen as weakness. But in Buddhism, silence, when it comes from clarity and self-mastery, is one of the highest forms of inner strength. Picture this: a tall, ancient tree in a storm. The wind howls. The leaves shake. Branches may sway. But the trunk? It doesn't move. It doesn't need to push back. It knows the wind will pass, and it will still be standing. A wise person is the same. When insulted, they don't need to respond. Not because they don't know what to say, but because they know some things just don't deserve a reaction. There's an old story from the Buddha's life. A Brahmin came to him, shouting, insulting, trying to provoke him. But the Buddha just sat there calm, unshaken. When the man finally stopped, the Buddha gently asked, "If someone gives you a gift, and you don't accept it, who does it belong to?" The man replied, "To the giver." The Buddha smiled. "Then I do not accept your words. They still belong to you." That silence wasn't avoidance. It was a declaration of self-mastery. I will not let your emotions control my inner state. That's a deep kind of freedom, a strength that doesn't need to shout. And the truth is, in many situations, silence is the loudest voice. Not to win, but to protect your peace. Not because you're weak, but because you know what's worth your energy and what isn't. The stone of anger. Have you ever had this kind of day? Something small happens in the morning, someone says something irritating, or does something that makes you feel disrespected. And instead of letting it go, your mind keeps holding on to it all day. At work, it lingers. At home, it still simmers. Even when you lie in bed, it's there like a heavy stone pressing on your chest. You can't breathe, but no one sees it. Now imagine this. Someone hands you a rock and tells you to carry it all day. At first, it feels light. But after a few hours, your arm starts to ache. By evening, your whole body's sore. And by night, you just can't take it anymore. That's exactly what anger is like. Every time we get angry, it's like picking up another invisible stone. The person who upset you, they've probably already forgotten, but you're still carrying it. In a retreat for older practitioners, an elderly woman once shared, "I know I get angry easily, but that's because I remember everything. I remember every wrong someone did to me. And the longer I remember, the heavier my heart feels." That story is so true. Because anger isn't just a reaction, it's something we carry. Like a rock, it may seem small, but the weight adds up. Through years of working with longtime Buddhist students, I've noticed something consistent, especially among those in the second half of life. They aren't deeply hurt by huge events. It's the small things left unresolved. A word never cleared up. A misunderstanding never addressed. A quiet wound left to grow. Each becomes a stone. And day by day, they carry more. The Buddha taught, no one can make you suffer unless you hold on to the suffering. Holding on to anger doesn't hurt the other person, it only makes you suffer. Letting go of the stone isn't about letting go of your values. It's not about ignoring what matters. It's about choosing peace for yourself, not because the other person deserves forgiveness, but because your heart deserves peace. And once you set that stone down, even just once you finally realize, wow, I've been carrying this way too long. And from that moment, you can walk forward lighter, freer, with open hands and a more spacious heart. The river that bends. Have you ever been in a conversation where everything you say gets shut down? You try to explain gently, but the other person just keeps arguing, keeps pushing back, keeps escalating. And when it's over, you don't feel relief. You feel drained. Your mind is heavy, your heart tired. Now picture this. A river flowing toward a large boulder. The river doesn't argue. It doesn't shout. It doesn't try to break the rock. It simply bends, flows around it, and keeps moving. In Buddhist teachings, water is a powerful symbol. It's soft, but strong. Flexible, but steady. It adapts, but never loses its way. We can live like that too. Not every moment needs a confrontation. Not every situation needs a reaction. Sometimes, the wisest way to protect your peace is to take the gentle path around. There was a woman who shared that she'd spent years trying to explain an old misunderstanding to a family member. But every time she brought it up, it turned into another argument. Eventually, she stopped, not because she gave up, but because she realized peace doesn't come from being understood. It comes from not letting others hurt you anymore. So she chose a lighter path. No more repeating the old story. No more trying to go through the obstacle. She chose to go around. and her heart finally felt lighter. The Buddha once said, "If there is an obstacle on your path, find another way, but do not stop walking." That's how water flows. You don't need to change the rock. Just change how you move past it. Life is full of these rocks, difficult people, harsh words, frustrating situations. But if you always try to push through, you'll be the one who ends up bruised. So be like the river, keep flowing. Stay true to your path. And when the rocks appear, bend and crash. True strength often lies in the ability to be soft, and the one who can keep a steady heart in the middle of life's storms. That's someone who's walked far along the path of awakening. Don't accept the poisoned gift. Have you ever had someone say something really harsh to you, maybe offensive, critical, or hitting on something you've been quietly carrying in your heart? And even when you tried to let it go, that one sentence kept looping in your head, weighing you down the whole day? Picture this. Someone brings you a gift, but it's not a birthday gift. It's a package full of anger, judgment, bitterness wrapped in heavy, hurtful words. And they hold it out, just waiting for you to take it. But what if you don't? What if you simply don't reach out your hands? Long ago, the Buddha taught this through a real encounter. A Brahmin man, full of rage, came to him and hurled insult after insult. The Buddha stayed silent, calm. When the man was done, the Buddha asked gently, "If someone brings you a gift, but you don't accept it, who does it belong to?" The man replied, "To the one who offered it." The Buddha said, "Exactly. I do not accept your words." Such a simple response, yet such a powerful teaching on inner freedom, because not every word deserves our reaction. Staying silent isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's knowing that if we take in someone's poison, we become the ones who suffer. An older student once shared, she used to be so easily hurt. One careless comment could crush her inside. But after years of mindfulness and Dharma practice, she realized, not everyone can see what's in your heart, and you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Your heart is like a room. If you let every gift of the toxic ones get placed inside, it will eventually become too heavy to breathe. But if you choose what to keep and let go of what's harmful, your heart stays a place of peace. In life, we'll all be misunderstood, criticized, or wrongly spoken about. But you always have a choice to receive the gift or not. Sometimes, the greatest freedom is not in having the last word, but in not letting someone else's words become wounds in your heart. Peace doesn't come from changing what others say. It comes from learning how not to be shaken inside. The bamboo in the storm. Have you ever felt like you did your best to stay calm, to avoid a fight, to stay quiet, and yet someone still kept hurting you? Sometimes, just a few careless words can break something inside us. We smile on the outside, but inside, there are cracks. Now imagine, a strong storm sweeps through a garden. The tall, stiff trees, many of them snap. But one plant is still standing. Bamboo. Bamboo doesn't fight the wind. It doesn't try to stay stiff. It bends. It moves with the wind, soft and flexible. And when the storm passes, it rises back up, whole. In Zen and Buddhist teachings, bamboo is a symbol of strength through softness. Being soft doesn't mean being weak. It means understanding the truth of life. The wind will blow. People will speak. Not everyone will treat us as we hope. But instead of bracing for every gust, we can learn to bend, stay rooted, and let those words pass like wind on skin. An elderly monk once shared about a hard chapter in his monastic life. He was misunderstood. People inside the temple gossiped. At first, he tried to explain himself, tried to stand tall with logic. But the more he tried, the more tired he became. One day, while walking in the forest, he stopped by a bamboo grove. The wind was strong. The bamboo bowed soft, patient, no judgment, no anger. And he realized, sometimes the strongest thing we can do is not let our hearts break from someone else's ignorance. The Buddha once said, when criticized, be like the earth, silent, unmoved, unshaken. Bamboo lives that way, and so can we. Words are light, but they can pierce deeply. If we're not soft enough to let them pass through, they'll lodge in our hearts and hurt us over time. But if we learn to bend like bamboo, if we don't let one careless word break a whole peaceful day, if we root ourselves deeply in mindfulness, then no storm, no matter how fierce, can break us. True strength isn't always about standing tall. Sometimes it's about knowing how to rise again after learning when to bow. Compassion, the shield for our heart. Have you ever wondered why some people treat us so harshly? They might be family, co-workers, or even strangers, yet just a few thoughtless words or actions can leave such deep pain. And in those moments, it's not just sadness that shows up, but anger too. But think about this. Would anyone yell at a doctor just for saying, you have a fever? Of course not. We understand that the doctor's just pointing out a symptom. Now, look again at the one who hurt you. Maybe what they said wasn't fair. Maybe their actions were wrong. But what if they're carrying a pain you can't see? People who are angry, bitter, harsh, are often people who are deeply suffering. They don't know how to name that suffering, so they spill it onto others. And if we respond with anger too, it's like drinking their poison and hurting ourselves in the process. At a mindfulness session for older students, one man shared how he had carried anger toward his father for years because of things said and done in the past. But over time, he saw something. His father had never known gentleness. He lived his whole life in a cage of pressure and harshness. And the son, just a child then, was the closest place to unload that pain. The Buddha once said, holding on to anger is like holding hot coals to throw at someone. You are the one who gets burned. But when you look at the other person through the lens of compassion, you begin to see they are hurting. And from that space, you no longer want to hurt them back. In Buddhism, compassion isn't weakness. It's not blind tolerance. It's the deep understanding that the other person is suffering and choosing not to add to that suffering. Compassion is the shield for the heart, not to fight back, but to protect your inner peace. And something strange happens. When you stop reacting and meet others with understanding, sometimes the tension melts, not because they changed, but because your heart grew wider. To hold compassion in the hardest moments, that is the wisdom of the heart. Because in the storm of someone else's pain, only a soft heart stays afloat. Gratitude for difficult people. Have you ever met someone who rubbed you the wrong way the very first time you met them? Maybe they were blunt, overreactive, or just seemed like they were always ready to pick a fight. And you thought to yourself, why do I have to deal with people like this in my life? But imagine this. What if life was only filled with kind people? What if everything flowed smoothly and everyone agreed with you? Sure, your mind might feel comfortable, but would it ever be challenged? Would you ever grow? In the Buddha's teachings, there's something powerful and unexpected. The people who bring us the most discomfort can sometimes be the ones who help us grow the most. Not because they're right, but because through them, we're offered the chance to look deeper into ourselves. Am I overreacting? Can I learn to be more compassionate? What inside me is so easily hurt by this? An older meditation student once shared that she had a neighbor who constantly made snide remarks. Every encounter felt like a storm in her heart. But during a 10-day silent retreat, she was invited to practice gratitude not just for pleasant things, but for the hard ones too. And she began to reflect. That neighbor showed me just how much anger I was still holding inside. She was the only person who gave me a daily chance to practice patience. From that moment, she shifted. Not because the neighbor changed, but because her heart changed. From resistance to acceptance. From reacting to learning. The Buddha once said, "There is no path to inner growth without bumping into reality." And that reality often shows up in the form of difficult people not chosen by us, but sent by life as hidden teachers. Just like diamonds are not formed in ease, but through pressure, time, and endurance. Our hearts also need challenge to reveal their true depth, how still we can stay, how forgiving we can become, how rooted we are when emotions rise. So yes, the person who makes you uncomfortable may be an unnamed teacher. You don't need to thank them out loud. Just know this: because of them, your heart had a chance to grow. And when you can look at difficulty through the lens of gratitude, you're no longer a victim of circumstance. You're a student of the path, right in the middle of everyday life. Meditation is the root of inner peace. Have you ever felt like everything around you seems fine, but something inside just isn't? Nothing dramatic is happening, and yet there's this quiet restlessness, like something in you just won't settle. Now imagine this. A tree might have beautiful branches and lush green leaves, but if the roots are weak, even a light wind can knock it over. The human mind is the same. You can take care of everything on the outside: your job, family, responsibilities, even your image. But if you don't care for what's underneath the root of your being, sooner or later, you'll feel tired, quick to anger, emotionally fragile, and disconnected from yourself. In Buddhist teaching, meditation isn't something mystical or complicated. It's simply the act of sitting still, returning to your breath, and observing what's happening inside, without judgment, without trying to fix it. It sounds so small, but it can lead to deep transformation. One elderly practitioner shared that she started meditating just 10 minutes each morning after years of feeling mentally scattered. At first, she didn't notice much, but after a few weeks, she realized she wasn't getting angry as easily. And when someone said something upsetting, she no longer reacted instantly. She paused, and in that one pause, peace began. The Buddha once said, "Hold your mind like a person standing beside a river watching everything pass by without being swept away." Each time you sit and follow your breath, you're practicing exactly that. Thoughts come, you notice them. Emotions rise, you name them. No pushing, no grabbing, just witnessing. In the Buddhist path, meditation is a way of coming home. We don't sit to escape life. We sit to reconnect to the root of peace inside us, right in the middle of life's movement. Life will never stop changing. There will always be things we didn't plan for, people who upset us, health that shifts, moods that come and go. But if we can keep a little quiet space each day where we just sit, breathe, and listen inwardly, that space becomes our grounding. No one else can hand us peace. Peace is something we grow, breath by breath, every time we choose to come back home to ourselves and just sit. The bitter cup of tea. Have you ever held on to anger for so long that it didn't just cloud your mind, but drained your body, robbed you of sleep, and slowly dimmed the joy in your everyday life? Picture this. Someone is sitting in front of a cup of tea. They know it's bitter, harsh, unpleasant, not nourishing in any way. Yet instead of pushing it away, they keep sipping. One sip, then another. Each time, their face tightens, and still they ask, "Why can't I feel at ease?" Anger is just like that bitter cup of tea. We know it brings suffering. We know it tastes awful, but we keep drinking it. We keep holding on, replaying the old story, feeding the same thought shower after hour, day after day. The Buddha once said something powerful. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Anger scorches the one who carries it long before it touches anyone else. An elderly Buddhist practitioner once told me he'd been angry at his own brother for over 10 years. One disagreement about a family matter, that's all it took. And every time he recalled it, he'd drink another bitter sip. His emotional life was colored by resentment for a whole decade. Only after attending a silent retreat did he realize his brother had moved through his life like a passing breeze, while he had chained himself to an old wound. Letting go isn't easy, but clinging now, that's real suffering. The more you hold, the more bitter you become. Your eyes lose their gentleness. Your voice, once warm, begins to harden. That bitter tea won't evaporate on its own. It only begins to fade when you choose to set it down. Not because the other person deserves forgiveness, but because your own heart deserves peace. The Buddha taught compassion, but first compassion for yourself. And sometimes that compassion begins with this simple act, not taking another sip of anger. So, if you're still holding on to something from the past, something unresolved, something painful, ask yourself gently, am I still pouring more into this bitter cup? Or is it time to finally put it down? Because peace doesn't come from winning an argument from the past. Peace begins the moment you decide you don't need to drink bitterness anymore. Anger is a choice, not destiny. Have you ever noticed how two people can go through the exact same situation, yet react completely differently? One explodes in anger, shouting, blaming, storming out. The other, quiet, calm, maybe even smiling a little, and then just moves on. And you wonder, how can the same thing happen, but one person stays peaceful while the other falls apart? Picture this. You step outside, and suddenly it starts to rain. You can look up at the sky and curse, why now of all times? Or you can grab an umbrella, throw on a raincoat, and keep walking. The rain didn't change, but the way you responded, that's what made the difference. Anger is the same. It's not fate. It's not something we're forced to feel. Anger is a choice. And the moment we realize that, something shifts. We begin to taste real inner freedom. In one Dharma talk, an elder once told me, I can't control my anger. Every time someone messes up, it flares up instantly like a reflex. But after practicing mindfulness for a while, he discovered something important. His anger wasn't rising because others were wrong. It was because something inside him was wired to react that way. And more importantly, he didn't have to water that seed anymore. The Buddha once taught, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. And in that choice lies our freedom and growth. No one can force you to get angry. No one else decides how you react. There's an old Zen story about a young monk who was harshly insulted by a villager. But instead of lashing out, the monk simply placed his hands together, bowed, and walked away. The villager ran after him, confused, and asked, "Why didn't you get angry?" The monk smiled gently and replied, "Because I don't want anyone else to control my emotions but me." That's wisdom. Holding on to anger doesn't make us strong. Letting it go at the right moment, that's real strength. And you have that power. The power to not let someone's careless words ruin your day. The power to not let another person's mistake push you into darkness. The power to choose calm over chaos. Life will always bring challenges, but how we respond, that's up to us. And when you realize that anger is a choice, you hold in your hands a precious key. A key that unlocks the door to inner freedom. A smile, the softest wall. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Someone criticizes you, maybe even attacks you out loud in a meeting, at a family dinner, or in front of others, and in that moment, you can feel the heat rising inside. Your ego flares up, your heart races, and everything in you wants to react, wants to fight back, to prove you're right. But imagine this instead. You simply smile. Not a forced smile, not a sarcastic grin, but a calm, grounded smile. The kind of smile that comes from someone who understands what's happening and chooses not to lose their peace over a few sharp words. That smile, it becomes the softest wall, and yet the strongest. It doesn't push back. It doesn't hurt anyone, but it clearly says, I choose not to let this shake my peace. In my years of teaching older Buddhists here in the US, I often hear, why does it feel like the older I get, the more sensitive I become to people's words? And the truth is, when our body, our emotions, or our spirit becomes a bit more fragile, it's easier for even small things to stir us. That's when a soft, undefended smile becomes medicine for the heart. The Buddha once said, to remain unmoved amidst praise and blame, gain and loss, is to hold the most precious treasure. That kind of peace often begins with a smile. A meditation student once shared a story. During one of her teaching sessions, a student stood up and openly criticized her. No one intervened. She just looked at the person, stayed silent, and smiled. After the session, the student came up and said, I don't even know why I was so angry. You didn't react. It felt like I was yelling into the wind. You see, a smile doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't need to win. It just needs a steady heart one that refuses to be dragged into old patterns. Because when we smile like that, we create space. A space between what others do and how we choose to respond. And in that space, peace begins to grow, quietly, without anyone needing to notice. Just a simple choice to not let someone else decide how your heart feels today. So next time someone throws a harsh word your way, remember this. You don't need to build a wall of bricks. Just offer a gentle, compassionate smile. Because that's the softest wall and also the strongest one. When we reflect on these simple but powerful images, from the bitter cup of tea, the burning coal of anger, the empty boat, to the soft wall of a smile, we start to see peace has never lived outside of us. It's in how we look, how we understand, and most importantly, how we choose to respond to life each day. Yes, we'll all be misunderstood, hurt, pulled by sudden storms of anger. But the moment we pause, watch our own mind, let go of a little pride or the need to win, that's when the light of inner freedom begins to shine. And slowly, we can learn to walk through storms with a soft heart that doesn't break. If there's one thing you take away from this video, let it be this gentle reminder. Anger is a choice. Forgiveness is a choice. Peace is also a choice. Every moment of the day, you get to choose the path you walk and how you want to live the rest of that day. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If something in these words touched your heart, I invite you to subscribe to BUDDHISM Seeds and join this journey of awakening. Please like this video, share it with someone who may need a quiet pause today, and leave a comment below about what touched you most. May you keep walking through this life with peaceful steps and a heart that doesn't get swept away by the winds.